The Tartarian Empire, according to true believers, was destroyed over 100 years ago by a massive flood of by a massive flood of, what is this? I think it's mud. It's not poo. Yeah, it tastes like mud with a slight hint of chocolate. By a massive flood of mud. Welcome to Archaeology with Flint Dibble. I'm Flint Dibble, and in this video, we're gonna dig into the mud. We're gonna dig into the chocolate and see what we find in a grand old debunk of old world Tartaria. Okay, I'm sure many of you have heard of the mud flood in Tartaria at this point. As far as BS goes, it's pretty dang popular. But for those of you who have not, here is a quick summary.
When searching about the mud flood theory, you may have also come across the term Tartaria. It is difficult to ascertain exactly what Tartaria is. According to Wikipedia, it is a region or multiple regions in Asia that represent unknown areas by Europeans. A British 1783 table of flags showed Tartaria, or Tartary in this case, as one of the flags. The theory is that this civilization was much bigger than thought and could have existed for hundreds of years. The inherited buildings buried under the mud floods is attributed to this civilization, and in extension is believed to have been worldwide. Tartaria would have been conquered maybe little by little and slowly whittled down, then afterwards would have been erased by history.
The Tartaria conspiracy has all of the hallmarks of popular fake archaeology and history. 1. History as you know it is a lie. Don't trust scholars nor books. Don't trust me, guys. 2. There's a lost global civilization that they nickname the Old World, a riff off of the New World Order. 3. It had advanced technology. Giants, too, actually, giant creatures. 4. It was destroyed in an immense global cataclysm, which they call the Mud Flood. 5. This destruction was 100 to 200 years ago, and it ushered in something called the Great Reset, which brought about our modern world. The Tartarian community borrows from a wide range of other fake history or conspiracist concepts, from Atlantis to ancient aliens to flat Earth and beyond. All of this is grafted onto a core trunk of esoteric fake Russian histories, which is where the concept of Tartaria itself comes from. As you can see, sort of with this map, this region that was sort of unknown in Central Asia was called Grand Tartary back, a few hundred years ago. Because historically, this Grand Tartary consisted of a large chunk of what we call Russia, Mongolia too, a little bit of China, a few other countries as well, but we think of it oftentimes Russian. In the media, this Tartarian mud flood conspiracy has been nicknamed the QAnon of architecture, which, to be honest, is a justifiable nickname, as it really is the grand conspiracy of all fake archaeology conspiracy theories. Or as one Tartarian influencer on YouTube calls it, the mother of all rabbit holes.
Spurred on my interest in a topic that I had been thinking about for a while, but didn't really look too much into. And as I looked into it more today, I realized that it is likely the mother of all rabbit holes. But I am not ready to get into that here today for a couple of reasons. First, I just want to look into it more and make sure that I can kind of fit the pieces together and feel confident that it's a possibility. And I also, before I actually dove into that, I wanted to make sure that you would understand some of the things that I would be referring to if I do make a video on that topic, because I will be talking about things called resets, mud floods, and Tartaria.
Now, let's take a quick second here. This channel, called There's No Place Like Home, is a homeschooling channel. Well, at least originally a homeschool channel, who now covers religious topics that many Christians are too afraid to tackle. So, things like Tartaria, giants, cataclysms, resets, and the idea of history being a lie. These are the popular topics covered in her Question the Narrative series. I really hope that there are not too many people that are homeschooled on this channel because, whew, talk about some fake history. This is some fake history.
Now, the next thing that I'm going to talk about is mud floods, because that ties in with the reset events, because a lot of times it is thought that what caused these resets was some sort of mud flood. So as you will see in this photo here, we have these beautiful buildings, except this building, it looks very old. Now that could just be mud all over it, but I'd have to ask, why does it have mud all over it? But if you actually look at these buildings, they all look very old. And you have to wonder, and also look how many of them there are. And you see these huge piles of mud everywhere. You see these crumbled stones, and you just kind of see people standing around. And this is something else that you will see in a lot of these mud flood photos. I'm trying to see what this is here. I don't know. I thought maybe a horse and buggy. I'm not really sure. But a lot of the people, it just seems like they're just standing around, not really sure of what to do.
I mean, she's literally just making this up as she goes along. Like, it looks old because it's an old photograph. The resolution is crap. There's mud everywhere. I don't know what to tell you. That sure looked like a construction zone to me. It did not look like there was mud everywhere. Oh my God, I really hope that no parents are homeschooling their children on her content, but somehow I feel like probably some of them are. What a stupid world we live in. Oh my God. But look, the reality is that there's an absolute mud flood of content built around this Tartarian theory. It is super popular on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, and beyond. All over the internet, this stuff has flooded it with a whole bunch of mud. And, one of the key things that differentiates Tartaria from other pseudo archaeology narratives is that it doesn't actually have a charismatic figure leading the movement. So there's like nobody with the stature of Graham Hancock on Ancient Apocalypse, or that hair guy on Ancient Aliens, Georgios Tsoukalos, or anyone like that. There's no like major figure that is here. It's very, very much community led. I'm here at Cardiff Bay to make the point that the Tartaria conspiracy is absolutely community driven. There are hundreds of creators all over the world and cities around the world identifying Tartarian architecture where they live. And so look, right behind me is the Pierhead building. It was built in 1897, and this is classic Tartarian according to these conspiracy theorists. Can't you see it? It just looks so Tartarian, right? Do you really think that we could have built something like this, something so impressive? Look at it.
It's been a while since I filmed anything about this whole Tartaria thing, but guess what? I'm all the way down here in Cardiff Bay in South Wales. It's just a nice place like this. This is all pretty new, pretty modern, last 20-something years, 25, 30 years. But this, come on now, man. Y'all really think that this was built by us? What I mean by us is like our civilization. Let's look at it, man. This right here is what we build. All right, so this is the Welsh Senate building. So this is like the Assembly Parliament building for Wales. And I was built maybe, I don't know, like 10 years ago. Now look at this thing. I don't know, but I don't know when this thing was built, but this is ridiculous. This is the Welsh Parliament Pierhead building, it's called. The Pierhead. Now, if you look up close to it, this is some old school brick. This thing's got design elements on there that we haven't even considered. If you look at it, not for nothing, but isn't that the Tartarian symbol of Tartarian flag? Right? That to me is the Tartarian flag, isn't it? So let me. I'm pretty convinced. That's me right now. I'm pretty good. So now here I am. All right, check this out. You understand what I'm saying now? To the Pierhead building in Cardiff Bay. It's definitely something. Elements. I'll tell you. All right, now let's have a look here. Look at all the elements. Look at this. All the towers. This way, that way, and up. This thing is something we don't do. The tower and the tire.
Ornate architecture with towers and domes, elegant decoration is one of the key codes for conspiracy theories for Tartarian architecture. This elegant architecture contrasts with the modern, brutalist, blocky, what they would call ugly look that we oftentimes build in today. A second key feature of Tartarian architecture are the bricks. Did you notice that TikToker refused to touch the brick architecture with his hands? He was wearing gloves. That's because these conspiracy theorists believe that these bricks were used to harness electromagnetic energy.
So let's talk about one of the big parts of the free energy architecture of the old world: red bricks. That's right. There is a reason why so much of the old world structures are red brick, and why so much of the buried structures we find are of the red brick variety. Because they knew something that we are just now catching on to today. These red bricks could hold an electric charge. Just take a look at some of these articles yourself. You see, they disclose a lot of these bits and pieces of old world tech, and it's forgotten just as quick. Red bricks, some of the world's cheapest and most familiar building materials, can be converted into energy storage units that can be charged to hold electricity, like a battery, according to new research. Is it really new research, or repurposed technology from the old world?
Just like this ornate decoration in brick that you can see looks nothing like the conspiracy theorist flag of Tartaria. I mean, it's nothing similar. Look at this. Whew. Man, what you have to do to make a YouTube video. Oh my God. Kids, don't go around touching bricks from Tartarian buildings. They are absolutely dangerous. But you know what? Free energy is what will set you free. It will free your mind. And don't forget that the Tartarians had free energy. I'm starting to believe now. This free energy is one of the many key points that demonstrates we've hit the bottom of the rabbit hole of pseudo-archaeology. We are in free-ranging conspiracy theory land at this point. This next video is by the YouTuber Mind Unveiled, who's one of the most popular YouTubers that has Tartaria content out there. His videos have millions of views in whole.
If one was to look into the matter, it would become evident that the ancient builders of the past possessed advanced technology. So most of us have heard of the theories about how the Pyramid of Giza is some type of generator, or Pumapunku and the precise precision of the angles when cutting a stone, or the Ellora caves in India where it seems the creators possess some type of stone cutting technology. It's as if this was simple for them. Why else would they spend so much time decorating with ornate details? We don't see anything like this being constructed in the modern day, and if it was, it'd be done with cheap materials. The two main theories are that either these were constructed by aliens or advanced ancestors. The aliens belief is really just a fetish for sci-fi that's a relatively new concept to the human race. On the other hand, advanced ancestors are referenced in the lore of many ancient philosophers and myths. This is not a new idea. The concept of Atlantis, the Golden Age, and the Flood is at the root of almost every ancient myth. Now, we can find references to advanced technologies in ancient lore from around the world, but we'll get to that. I'm sure that many are willing to accept that Atlantis was the real deal, but many still have never considered that this technology may have existed in our culture much more recent than we're led to believe. Researcher Graham Hancock would date this culture to the Younger Dryas period, about 12,000 years ago. Well, what if it wasn't that long ago, more like 1,000 or 2,000 years ago, and this tech has carried on even to our modern age? None of this technology is new. The story of many modern technologies are fabricated, like photography, airplanes, electricity, or even computers. But this tech we have today is baby step to what the ancients were using. This is just stuff for our entertainment, for our comfort. The ancients possessed powerful EMF technology, which was used for free ether energy and had the capabilities of tapping into other dimensions. Ether was commonly accepted in science until about 100 years ago. Then, atomism took over, the attempt to explain everything in nature with immeasurable substance. It's now heresy to even mention the ether or free energy in science. You'd be ridiculed and most likely lose your position if you were taking that stance professionally. The history of electricity has been distorted and manipulated. Most of us are willing to accept that Atlantis had advanced tech, but still believe in the traditional mainstream version of history. This video is going to cover how history is being deliberately distorted, how it was rewritten by the victors, and how the most famous cities that we now inhabit belong to an advanced civilization from around as early as 300 years ago. A civilization that possessed advanced EMF technologies. We will go over the BS.
Do you already believe in Graham Hancock's Lost Atlantis, a lost civilization that's hidden from our history? Do you already believe that archaeologists and historians are lying to you about our past, covering up something grand? Do you want to believe in the ultimate fantasy, one that rewrites history before your eyes? Well then, the Tartarian mud flood is for you. Step right up and become initiated into the grand conspiracy of fake history. Look, it's easy to muddle facts with prehistoric periods from thousands of years ago. We just have so few ancient texts, and we can start cherry picking from myths and monuments and connect them in ways that make sense superficially. You know, the ages old pyramids around the world are connected to each other. Or maybe these handbags. Look at them. They all have such lovely handbags over here. I mean, ignore the fact that this one is not a handbag, it's an Egyptian ankh, or ignore the fact that these over here from Göbekli Tepe are absolutely not handbags. These are actually depictions of the roofs over these circles of stone T-pillars. But whatever. This one's a bucket, for example. Don't believe me on this? Dr. David Miano at the World of Antiquity has an in-depth video on the topic. Check it out.
But as far as Assyriologists go, they have been able to determine exactly what these Assyrian demigods are carrying in their hands. They're called dalu. In Assyrian, the term dalum indicates a bucket for drawing water. Examples of both round-bottomed and cylindrical dalu buckets with handles are those depicted on the friezes of Shalmaneser III's black obelisk, and identified as such in the epigraphs of the same monument. Here you can see handled dalu buckets with a globular shape and a button base in the black obelisk. These here are cylindrical and rounded dalu buckets in the black obelisk, which are the same type as seen on the reliefs depicting. Not only have we seen these buckets in art, we've seen them in real life. Archaeology has uncovered some of them. A well-preserved example of an 8th century bronze bucket from northern Syria is illustrated in O.W. Muscarella's catalog. It may be taken as the best candidate for the cylindrical type of dalu bucket.
The idea where things that look superficially similar, like these pyramids here, including the one built by the baby, are connected as something that is significant is called hyperdiffusionism. In a sense, an idea diffuses out globally and becomes part of a style. And this concept is not a real archaeological or historical concept. Instead, it is a core theoretical tenet of many forms of pseudo-archaeology and pseudo-history that attribute these superficial resemblances to a lost civilization, or aliens, or lizard people, or giants, or Tartaria, and this lost civilization diffused this technology and style across the world, whether it be these handbags, which aren't handbags, or pyramids, some of which aren't pyramids, etc. And the Tartarian conspiracy is filled with many, many examples of hyperdiffusionism. But what sets the Tartarian conspiracy apart from most other pseudo-archaeology uses of this theoretical tenet is that it uses modern structures, structures that were only built 100 to a few hundred years ago, after the world was interconnected and globalized, and after we know that hyperdiffusionism on a global scale actually does take place in the modern world because of our technology and connections. Just like with these sort of 19th century brick structures in Glasgow, Philadelphia, and Cardiff, they look similar. They're built in the same time period out of similar materials because they're part of a similar architectural milieu in the late 19th century, the modern period, in a sense. But these conspiracists who believe in Tartaria, they believe that all history as we know it is a lie, including this fairly recent history. And therefore, the recorded historical documents we have that describe in detail, say, for example, the architectural construction of star forts, these documents are to be discarded. Instead, we should marvel at how similar they are and imagine a new Tartarian history for them.
So you want to know about star forts? That's good. That's real good. Alright, listen to this. So star forts have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Nobody knows who built them. Some say the Tartarians, some say the Moors. but nobody knows for sure. There are many different types. You can get star fort castles, star fort towns, and even star fort cities. And many people don't know this, but the Statue of Liberty is actually built on top of a star fort. Even the Pentagon is shaped like a star fort. So these star forts was built to be a vibrational frequency ecosystem. It gathered and stored natural energy from the ether and the water, a bit like a power station. The technology that they had in the past was so advanced, it's amazing. Imagine if they never had no technology, no satellites. How would you remove the land and replace it with water for it never to grow back again? Just look at the shape and the detail. We sure don't make it like that anymore.
This is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I wish I could play the music in these clips because all these TikTokers use music in their clips, but YouTube gives me copyright infringement, so we've muted out all the music. But do remember this guy. He goes by the name Bully Slayer with the handle One Foul Wow on TikTok and on other platforms, and he's probably the most popular Tartarian influencer with many tens and hundreds of millions of views on TikTok alone. And according to Bully Slayer and countless Tartaria enthusiasts, we have no idea who built the star forts, which I have to say is just silly. We do know star forts were first developed not that long ago. We have solid historical evidence for their development as a response to gunpowder and cannons that could knock down straight stone medieval walls. That's why they were developed, because cannons were knocking down the other walls that were already there. YouTuber Sebas van den Brink has a good summary of them on his channel, Why on Earth.
Bastion forts were often built using earth and brick, as brick does not shatter on impact the way stone does when shot with a cannonball. The first bastion forts were developed in Italy around the turn of the 16th century in response to the French invasion. Michelangelo used star forts in the defense of Florence, and it was from Italy that the practice spread, influencing fort design for another 300 years. Dutch architect Menno van Coehoorn and French military engineer Vauban further improved on the practice with many new additions and inventions. The design practice wasn't only applied to military positions, it was also used in the defensive works of cities. Famous examples such as Naarden in the Netherlands, Palmanova in Italy, and you can still see the defensive ring around the old city center of Nicosia in Cyprus.
I mean, of course, there are star forts all over the world. They developed in the 16th century as the world became colonized and globalized. And as gunpowder cannons spread as a military technology, star forts followed all over the world in order to defend oneself better. Notice that bricks have more power than just harnessing electricity. They're not just batteries. They're also pretty great because they don't shatter when hit by a cannonball. I wonder what else makes bricks useful. Oh yeah, they're natural. They're durable. They insulate well. They're available everywhere. They're customizable into different shapes and sizes. And they require low maintenance. Plus, they're batteries, of course. We've just never ever used them as batteries because I don't think they quite work that way. At least not yet. But seriously, it takes some real technological know-how to make this kind of brick, doesn't it? You gotta get some clay, you gotta shape it, you gotta bake it. Woo, that's some complex technology. Clearly, only the Tartarians had such technology. I mean, hell, I've excavated red brick structures myself in ancient Pompeii. The Romans had plenty of bricks. I guess they were all Tartarians too, which to be honest, some people think so. The reality is that bricks are found all over the world because they're cheap, they're useful, they're easy to make, they have all these great qualities. Again, just because things look similar does not mean they're part of the same civilization. The same idea does not have to diffuse from Atlantis or Tartaria or aliens. Now, the Tartarian conspiracy weaponizes everything that's pre-modern, anything that looks kind of similar, bricks, pyramids, whatever, and claims star forts and claims that they're all connected. All of these things, classical, neoclassical, Beaux Arts buildings, they're all part of the Tartarian conspiracy. Which of course is why it's so easy to find Tartarian influence around the world. Because there's some big old buildings in most cities, there's brick buildings in most cities, there's columns somewhere in most cities. So therefore they must all be Tartaria. Hyper-diffusionism at its best. And the size of these buildings is just as important as their features. Because yes, in the world of the Tartaria conspiracy, size really matters.
When you look deeper into the Tartarian Empire, you will also realize that there was a huge population of white giants, which some have defined as the Tartarian giants. Walking through any ornate building from the time of the Old World Empire, and you'll notice odd proportions. Doorways towering 12 to 20 feet high, staircases with enormous steps, and ceilings 3 times higher than what we see today. Who would use such towering designs if not the Tartarian giants?
Okay, there's a few important things in this short clip to debunk, aside from the fact that he sees this as white giants. The first is that these are historical photos of real people. Let's be clear, these giants really existed. In fact, for that matter, really tall people exist today, okay? That is, if you're simply defining giants as tall people, 7 foot or 8 foot tall, well, guess what? There's a few dozen people to have existed in the recent past since photography began, and several even today who are over 8 feet tall, or roughly over 2.5 meters. Wikipedia has a great list of them, both men and women, different ethnicities, different races, complete with pictures of them and their size. Go check them out, please. And as Brian Dunning on the Skeptoid podcast has said on his episode about Tartaria, he noted,
quizzically, many of the photographs I found in the YouTube videos and web forums depict Robert Wadlow, the tallest person in history, at 272 centimeters, 8 foot 11, who died in 1940. His identity is never given on these web pages. I recognized him simply because he's easily recognizable, and his photos are generally well known. But I couldn't figure out what the conspiracy theorists thought he had to do with the mud flood. Wadlow was born in 1918 and died quite young, so his photos show him with antique cars, clothing, and street scenes. Recalling that the mud flood is claimed to have happened in the 1800s, my guess is that these photos appear, to some undereducated people, to be from about that time period, thus making Wadlow one of the giants who lived in Tartaria. Photos of other people affected with gigantism are also shown, always old black and white photos. It seems clear that the believers consider photos of Wadlow and others like him to be the Tartarian giants that populated the earth prior to their presumed demise in the mud flood.
look, black and white photos of tall people does not mean there were mysterious giants in the past. I mean, hello, if Shaquille O'Neal was here, he'd be towering right over me. The same is true for 19th century newspaper reports of really large bones. Back then, the news went gaga. Every single time a mammoth bone or a dinosaur bone was found, everybody was like, giants! They must be giants! But nope, this is not giants. This is megafauna. And the same is true for really big buildings. I don't know what to say, but as an archaeologist, it's clear that people have been building really big buildings for a long time. They're just really big, like, the pyramids or the Pantheon or so many other monuments out there. Some might have really high ceilings like this cathedral. Or maybe they have really large doors like this door at Pompeii in front of a house. Or the doors found on ancient temples and other monumental buildings around the world. Big buildings are impressive. They look friggin' cool. They show off wealth and power and engineering intellect. They aren't needed for giants, they're just for showing off. I don't know what to say. This whole thing is just kind of stupid. I mean, like, absolutely silly at times. The simplistic correlations these influencers make are just like, what? But the popularity of some of this just means we need to keep exposing it for what it is. And we got to laugh at it because, like, let's be honest, laughter is medicine. It really is. And it hopefully can get some people to see how ridiculous these ideas are. So let's take a quick pause from serious debunking and take a look at what I think is the most hilarious challenge for Tartarian influencers: mountains. These Tartarian influencers absolutely struggle with mountains. And I don't mean that they struggle to climb them. I mean that they come up with mind numbing ways to explain their existence. Do you remember our homeschool friend from the beginning? She's got a great idea about the famous site of Petra in Jordan.
Okay. And now this is not particularly mud, but there are a lot of people who believe that some sort of catastrophe even happened, for example, at Petra. So this is at Petra, and they believe that this was not actually built into the rock itself, but that it was a building and that something happened that it ended up this way. I don't know if that's the case, but it's certainly interesting to think about.
Yeah, that's real interesting to think about. You got any proof? No, because Petra is quite clearly carved out of the same type of rock that is right there. And do you know of any rocks that grow from a catastrophe? No, they just don't. So it's pretty clear that this idea is absolutely bonkers and not interesting to think about unless you're as high as a kite. I mean, this stuff is just as believable as thinking that Indiana Jones is real. Look right here at this image on the left, or both of these images. You can see really clearly that Petra is simply carved out of the rock. Look at how it's inset into this cliff. Come on. This woman makes some real high quality homeschool content indeed. Or how about our old friend Mind Unveiled, the most popular Tartaria YouTuber? He's got a video about how mountains are actually ancient castles.
There are just so many different places where you start to see these massive boulders that are kind of the foundation on what everything is growing on. I mean, the whole mountain is basically these just massive boulders with soil on top and trees and plants. But in some areas, you could see that some of them had clear, straight edges or even looked as if they were stacked or kind of like brick walls. It's as if as what we see today is only the surface of what is visible. It's likely that many of these mountains have underground systems, remnants of old hallways and rooms, and if they really are just ancient castles that were either dissolved or melted in some type of massive calamity, then the structures left over would be what we know now as caves. They would be unrecognizable as buildings after countless years of vegetation obscuring their already dilapidated shapes. Some of these castles could be from a time before what we commonly call Tartaria. They'd have to have been so massive that it's impossible for us to imagine their greatness.
They're so massive that it's impossible to imagine their greatness. Oh my God. What the heck is going on here? Look, caves are clearly made from water dissolving chambers in rocks, limestone, and other dissolvable rocks. Okay. Boulders are just boulders. Mountains are made up of rock. And yes, nature can fracture into straight lines as rocks break apart cleanly due to pressure and how they're formed. But my favorite of all of the Tartaria influencers and their explanations for mountains has to be this idea from a guy on TikTok called The Doctor Regenerated. And I don't even know how to introduce this video. He believes that mountains are the remnants of ancient biology, of ancient animals and giants and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, just watch this. It's nuts.
If you needed further proof, that we live on the remains of a much larger past, and that geology is nothing more than hardened biology. Let's take a look at where a trendy and popular ingredient you might have in your cabinet came from. Himalayan salt. You tell me what these caves look like. Let's take a look at some of that salt taken out of these mines and collected into a pile. Now, do those not look like slabs of meat or what? Here's a closer picture of one. How about now? If pork ribs aren't your cut of choice, don't worry. There's many other cuts to choose from here.
Oh my God, I love how he says, let's take a look at that salt. I mean, what the hell? Oh my God, I'm absolutely blown away by the fact that anyone can believe that salt mineral, the mineral called salt, actually comes from meat. Like, no, man, that's just pink salt with different interleaved veins of white. That's why it sort of looks like bacon. And guess what? The reason bacon tastes salty is because people added salt to it. like, come on, man. Come on. Like, what the hell? How do millions of people watch that? Millions. Ay, ay, ay. So, okay, hyperdiffusionism is the core tool that this community uses to make us think that there's a Tartarian empire hidden in plain sight around us. Superficial similarities, whether it's star forts or whether it's rock salt that looks like meat, or whether it's, Beaux Arts architecture, brick architecture, neoclassical architecture with its columns and its domes, or whatnot. This is all used to make us think that these things that look alike come from the same Tartarian culture. Of course, keep in mind these are all very different styles of architecture, but check that out as we get to some of our clips later on. The second key component of this Tartarian conspiracy theory is that all of our evidence for the past is covered up, literally covered up by a cataclysmic flood of mud. No, not again! Ah! Yeah, the beauty of CGI mud flood. This time I didn't cover myself in chocolate, sorry. And this disaster known as the mud flood is the key here. The disaster and the cover-up is what ties everything together and puts it all in one nice, neat little package. So we're going to dive into the so-called evidence for the mud flood around Cardiff.
So you want to understand more about mud flood? That's good. That's real good. All right, listen to this.
Now, this is what they mean when they call something a mud flood house. Look at it. It's just a normal house, isn't it? I mean, it's abandoned, but it's just a normal house. But now let's look at it through their eyes. It has steps leading up, and this is apparently very significant. And it has a basement down here. And the basement is, well, to be honest, it's just an ordinary basement. It's boarded up because it's abandoned.
So, this is what I mean when I say mud. So, this is a typical mud flood building that you will see in London. Steps that lead up to the front door. You got your big window. But don't tell me that's a basement, brother. Don't do it. Don't tell me it was originally built like that.
And in their eyes, the basement is what they think is the evidence of the mud flood, a flood of mud covering up the first floor and raising the ground level and the entrance up higher.
Here's another mud flood building, and again, steps that lead up to the front door, which is really the second floor, and windows partly buried underground. And again, no surprises here. Steps that lead up to a front door and windows partly buried underground. And don't get it twisted. They've converted these into lower level apartments or basements. But if you keep digging down, you will see the original front door. You see, what they like to do is dig out as much of the building as possible from the mud, then convert a window into a door, and you'll always have steps that lead up to the front door or steps that lead down. Anytime you come across a building like this, you're dealing with mud flood.
But the reality is that buildings are just built with basements, and they have frequently below ground foundations to provide stability and support for them. This is just normal construction all over the world for thousands of years. And we can really do a walking tour through pretty much any city like this one in Cardiff to look at grand old buildings and see how this community creates the lost civilization of Tartaria about them. This one, for example, is the National Museum of Wales here in Cardiff, and it's one of the key features that we can look at here.
Well, we're back at Cardiff Museum. Looking for a place to go today.
I mean, just look at the size of these stones. They are truly enormous, aren't they? They must have been built by a lost civilization of Tartarians. I'm just joking. These really aren't that big compared to most stones that you can see on archaeological sites or true megaliths, but whatever.
I see from this angle here, right? Look at all the size of these stones, all the size of those stones. Yeah, this was built in a couple years in the late 1800s. Huh? Is that what you're trying to tell me? A fraction of every one of these flipping stones put over here in these columns. Yeah, these columns were built over in like 1800 something with these windows, right? But yeah, no, something we made perfect. Look at it.
But seriously, why not just make stuff up? This building was not built in the 19th century, and it was not built in 2 years. In fact, its construction started in 1912, and it finished in 1927 with a brief pause for World War I. There's basic information on this structure that people can look up to understand the history of it. And look down here, you'd think it must be clearly a mud flood basement, right?
Downstairs, mud flood. Come on.
But if you looked up the actual architectural designs and the models that were built to build this building, you'd see that the basements were part of the original design. This is not a raised ground level here. This is part of the design. And look at this doorway behind me. It's absolutely ornately carved and massive. It must have been for Tartarian giants, people who are much larger than me, and not just some monumental entranceway that matches the Beaux Arts style of the early 20th century.
I'm just going to give you an example of how big this freaking door is at Cardiff Museum. Look, man, this is me here, right? This is me here, but look, man, this goes all the way up to the top of there. That's pretty crazy, right? Look at the size of this one.
And now we're here at the Cardiff Story Museum. This actually used to be the old library for Cardiff. It was built in the Victorian era in the 19th century. You can see up here it says free library still carved into the stone, still surviving over 150 years later, or about 150 years later.
Hello everyone and welcome to the latest edition of Tartarian Wales with me, Mr. 76. Today I'm just walking through Cardiff City Centre once again. I'm always in Cardiff. And here's the Cardiff Story Museum in the Hayes area of Cardiff. All right, and you just look at this building. This is called the Cardiff Story Museum. And it's pretty freaking ridiculous. Let's have a look. I pointed this out before, but there's clear evidence of mud flood. All of the buried windows on the bottom. The entire bottom of this building is completely buried. Look at all these buried windows.
Jesus, man, you just have to do some basic research. Look at these. Of course, these are blocked-in basement windows. Back before electricity, they were important to be able to get sunlight into the basement. Of course, now with electricity, they're blocked off because we have electric light, and we don't want to have the cold or the rain get in.
Again, this is the whole side of the building, as you can see. This whole area has been buried. There are all these blocked up windows all the way down.
And seriously, all you need to do is some basic research online to find some photos of this library when it was first opened up, to see that these basement windows, they're not filled in from a mud flood. This is the level they were always at when they were open 130 years ago. Basic research answers these questions, guys.
Nice sized door. I think it's huge. See what I'm saying?
Stone doesn't lie, but stories can. The tale they give us that all of this was built by candlelight and chisel, it feels thin, like a shadow pretending to be real. These structures weren't built, they were birthed.
Sometimes the signs of old world Tartaria are hidden in plain sight. The fading elegance of an old world, if you just look up. And here we are at the Church of St. John the Baptist. It's nearly 1,000 years old. You can see the architectural style is so different from the 19th century monuments we've been looking at. But at the same time, any old ornate style is claimed to be Tartaria by these people. You can see the towers. It must have resonance, baby. It must have resonance.
They say the builders walked in silence. No blueprints, no scaffolding, just intention and stone that listened. Before this world was mapped and measured, before history was written with the ruler's hand, there were cities like this. Not made for commerce, not made for kings, but made to resonate, to hold energy, to hold memory, to hold us.
They basically claim that anything, bricks, domes, towers, they are there for free electricity. The Tartarian community comes together and claims that any old building, anything that's ornate and grand and monumental from 100 years ago or more, is part of the Tartarian conspiracy. But this is how they go around from city to city and find any ornate old grand building, many different styles, and claim it comes from old world Tartaria.
Tartarian whales at the Cardiff power grid. These were free energy power stations. Sacred geometry gathering free energy from the ether. We can't build this type of building today.
And here we end our tour of the monuments of Cardiff at railway station Cardiff Central.
This is Cardiff Central Station, a relic of permanence. Look at it. The pediments, the arches, the clock tower rising like a sentinel from another age. Solid, grand, purpose-built, and still standing proud. Etched in stone, Great Western Railway, not painted, not stuck on with glue, carved, as if the builders knew it was meant to outlast their grandchildren. These giant arched windows stand proud as a testament to a time long forgotten.
And look, a message that survived carved into the stone. It survived the Great Reset from the old world. Great Western Railway. What could that have meant in Tartaria? All right, all. A brief interruption for some big news. This video is sponsored by The Book. It's my first sponsorship, and as they say, you never forget your first, right? And who could forget The Book with a name and a heft to match? It's filled with esoteric lore, from flying airplanes to stone spear points and everything in between. It's a wonderfully illustrated library that Hungry Minds Publishing claims is a manual for rebuilding civilization after our inevitable collapse, possibly from a mud flood. This book actually reminds me of another book that I loved as a kid that illustrated how things work. It's great for spending a free moment learning a quick fact, and just look at it. It's beautiful, and it's a great conversation starter or attention grabber. Now, okay, look, I'm an archaeologist, and I don't believe the hype that this book will actually help you rebuild our society. But if a mud flood does come, these 400 pages will preserve the memory of our modern culture. They're great for reminiscing fondly with your family and friends, or for dispelling future conspiracy theories that will surely claim we use energy crystals and woo-woo magic rather than real science and actual know-how. Bonus, if you buy the book with the Flint Dibble 10 discount code here, you get 10% off. So don't miss out on this timeless piece. So there you have it. That was fun, wasn't it? The keys to identifying Tartaria in your own backyard. Go out and explore, my Tartarian friends. And yes, that is exactly what this community does. They have identified Tartaria all over the world, from large cities to small towns. Let's check it out.
Is the Mexico City Metropolitan Cathedral actually Tartarian?
No, I don't think it is, dude. But this is Red Pill Tartaria as he goes by. And no, I don't think it is. But let's see what you think.
As always, with these old opulent buildings, you see doors seemingly built for giants. They say this took nearly 250 years to construct.
Yeah, it probably did. Look at this. It's a pretty impressive monument. And no, those doors are not for giants, but whatever.
All that time for somewhere to pray? Or built to extract energy from the ether?
I guess they built it to pray. That is how they're using it right now. And I don't think there's any energy being extracted from the ether. But
I don't know who it is, and I don't know why, but somebody is telling a lie.
Sorry, we have to clip out all the music on these because of copyright issues. It's actually so much more engaging with some of the music that he uses. He uses Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata.
This is the Kansas State Capitol building, and they say it took 37 years to build by 5 different architects. Okay.
I don't know why he doesn't believe this. This is pretty well documented after all. I mean, we have documents of the construction of this Capitol building in Kansas. Capitol buildings around the US with their columns and their domes are kitty litter for this Tartarian community.
Are these Moscow subway stations originally Tartarian?
No.
Officially, we're told they were opened by Stalin back in 1935.
Actually, to be honest, only the first one was opened in 1935. The rest of them were opened in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, all the way up until today. They do look quite impressive, though. They're nice.
But was the communist Soviet Union really responsible for this intricate and opulent architecture?
Why not?
Take a look at this Tartarian structures.
I love the voice.
This Gothic-style building structure was taken over by the Catholic Church, by the Vatican, but this is Tartaria, a lost history from another civilization.
Yeah. I mean, they take any old building. None of these buildings, by the way, look similar to one another, right? We've seen now several buildings. They all look completely different architectural styles, but because they don't look modern, they're identified as Tartaria. This next one's interesting. This gets into some of the mud flood.
A great question. So, some of my favorite finds in terms of the mud flood over the years, I always go back to this location in Shelbyville, Illinois. Really like this as it's my hometown state and really kind of signifies the evidence of the mud flood being found in pretty much anywhere, any town in America. I mean, yeah, here in Shelbyville, this is the quintessential mud flood example. You got that whole buried level, completely lost. Historians have no clue about it locally.
Now, wait a second. He says historians have no clue about it locally. That is just a complete lie. I don't know what else to tell you. Let's roll this clip.
Streets. With a plan to redevelop the area, construction crews got to uncover some of that history, like storage bins for coal that would heat the buildings that have been there for over 100 years.
The tunnels apparently have been there more or less for coal chutes, but they do kind of wind around the buildings some, and they're very interesting to look at.
Photos of the tunnels and coal chutes got thousands of reactions on Facebook.
So as you can see, historians actually know quite well what these buildings underneath Shelbyville are. They were coal storage for furnaces to heat the buildings in the late 19th century. This is well understood and well documented. This is not some sort of mystery, but go on, Dr. Regenerated. Let's see what else you got.
Favorite ones here is in India, showing a whole sunken lost layer when they were doing renovation work on the building. Certainly no denying it or saying just basement windows here in India. Also another favorite location, I have a video on this one too. This museum in Moscow that was being excavated or renovated in 2007. See that whole dark line? That was the original street level there. And
yeah, they look like foundations, dude.
Now you see where it actually is. You can see that whole doorway, archways. Again, definitely no windows. Basement windows, anyways.
Definitely not.
And another classic from the 2007 renovation of the U.S. Capitol.
I don't see any basement windows here, dude. I don't see any windows at all. This just looks like the foundation of the Capitol building. You can even see the steps coming up right up above these. These are just supporting the steps in the middle.
Showing a hole covered up
lower level there.
You mean the foundation?
Ways and pillars go down. Certainly very revealing here.
Oh,
Another
yeah.
building I've seen in so many classic mud flood examples. It is another quintessential one. Buried doors and windows. This one's in Russia.
There's one possible buried door or window here. These arrows are pointing at nothing.
In Moscow, I believe. Lastly, one of my personal favorite finds recent.
Which, note that this one isn't even underground. This is an above ground superstructure of a destroyed remnant of a building, abandoned building.
Also because it was me that found it. Was in my hometown of Rockford, Illinois. This little butte just right on the edge of a parking lot here. Just take a look at this old wall.
Yeah, it's a wall.
Just got back from Galveston today. Had to go by Nicholas J. Clayton's Bishop Palace. Okay.
Do it.
Guess how many square feet this is? Almost 20,000.
Whoa.
Okay, look at this chimney. It doesn't even look like a chimney. There was another purpose for that, obviously.
Yeah, what was that other purpose, dude? You want to enlighten us on what that purpose of this cool building was? By the way, this building is actually really cool. Let me pull up some images of it. It's worth it. Look at this. The Bishop's Palace in Galveston, Texas. It's a Victorian style house that was then converted into a Bishop's Palace. This is really, really phenomenal building with some really, really cool architecture. I have to say, just because there's cool architecture, though, does not mean it's Tartarian. We actually have fairly good documentary evidence for the construction, the architecture behind this. We, as the guy mentioned, we know who designed it, Nicholas J. Clayton. So yeah, it's actually a really, really nice one. I really like this one, but I don't see any real compelling evidence that it's Tartarian. Maybe you do.
Newark, New Jersey. Classic mud flood.
Classic mud flood, Tammy. Classic mud flood.
Those were windows at one point.
Oh my God.
That was the first floor at one time. And then mud came and knocked the windows out. Then they cemented over them.
What's weird back here is, like, if the mud is why they cemented over them, then why are the upper story windows also cemented over? This is a derelict building, dude. This is not something special. It's just a derelict building that's sort of closed down. The street level has risen over time. Surprise, surprise.
I believe many of these cities were empty and abandoned for some.
So some of the key to this old photography is these Tartarians like to point out that there's nobody on the street. There's no cars, there's no horse buggies, there's no people. Why could there be no people in 19th century photographs of cities like San Francisco like
After the
this?
reset. Just look at scenes from this 1878 panorama of San Francisco.
And so the reason why these early photos from the 19th century of cities look empty so frequently is because early cameras needed a really long exposure time. And so anything moving didn't make it into the actual final photograph, only things that were still. And so that's why there's all these photos of empty cities from Paris to San Francisco to whatnot out there that these mud flooders keep saying are signs that people found the remnants before the Great Reset. It's not true. It's just because of how photography equipment worked in the 19th century. But you know, let's make a conspiracy theory out of it, guys. Let's do it. Let's do it.
One of many cities in the supposed 1800s time frame when we do get photos.
Oh, we've got your ass.
Oh no, he's got my ass, man. He's got my ass.
We've got your ass now. San Francisco, World Fair. Oh my day.
They love these world fairs because cities in America and around the world will build these elaborate sets over just a couple of years out of very cheap materials that looked grand to make these kind of world fair settings, and then they tear them down. Though part of it in San Francisco is still available to go see. It's actually kind of cool. I've been there. But at the same time, don't believe too much of it.
Oh, we've got your ass.
This is his catchphrase. He likes to go, "Oh, we got your ass now." What has he got our ass on? It looks like it's the Great Wall of China, right?
We've got your ass now.
No.
The Great Wall of China. You mean the Great Wall of Tartaria?
Yeah, that's what I meant. I meant the Great Wall of Tartaria. Yeah, that was Bully Slayer, and that is his catchphrase. We got your ass now. And now here we are with somebody who's going to do something similar.
Oh, I got their ass now. You ain't think I was letting them keep the Eiffel Tower, did you?
Why not?
This is a huge Tartarian energy device.
Of course it is. It looks exactly like all those other structures that we've seen already, doesn't it? It's very clearly Tartarian.
I try to tell people all the time, it's the same buildings all over the world.
No.
Look at the oldest photos, and you'll see it's the same neoclassical.
They look completely different. This one here is not even neoclassical. Where's the columns?
Greco-Roman palaces and post offices. These old cathedrals, it's all the same stuff every country you look at. And people say, well, that didn't happen in Africa. It's not like that there. It's in every city. Look at all this. Everywhere in South Africa, okay? Johannesburg, Cape Town, Pietermaritzburg. It's everywhere.
And they all look different. But yes, see, Tartaria is everywhere. Every continent out there.
Australia is a Tartarian empire. A
It
lot of
is.
people believe that the monuments we have in Australia and the buildings weren't exactly built from scratch. They weren't constructed new. They were reclaimed.
I guess everything is reclaimed. This is how they put it, is that we found everything. So when something is founded, like a city or a monument, we found it rather than built it.
Was Japan bombed during World War II to hide traces of old world Tartarian buildings?
Probably. This is actually something that comes up pretty frequently, is that the Great Wars, World War I and World War II, were there to destroy the remnants of the Tartarian Empire. But if they didn't destroy much, you guys go around everywhere in the world, every country in the world, and you find relics from Tartaria. So clearly they're not that successful at covering up history, you know?
And structures.
I recently visited Rome because, let's be real, what kind of Tartarian fan would I be if I didn't make a pilgrimage to the granddaddy of them all? The one place they couldn't destroy.
Oh, I see. We couldn't destroy Rome. It's the only place that was not destroyed with evidence of Tartaria, right? It seems like they're bringing up places all over.
Only bury under layers of lies.
Layers of
Walking
lies.
through the city is like stepping into a forgotten era. A place built for giants, not mere men.
Yes, a forgotten era of ancient Rome and medieval Rome is what that is. When men were giants.
These giant heads are found in Easter Island in the Pacific Ocean
Oh,
near
no.
Chile.
Do these look anything like Roman architecture? Neoclassical? Gothic? Anything? No, nothing, do they?
Just like mud-flood buildings, these statues were buried under 15 feet of mud.
Of course. You got my ass again, Bully Slayer. You got my ass again. Now, I want to be clear here. Not all of these were buried under mud. Those uphill in near the quarries that fell along the side of the roads were not found buried. They were found on the ground. Those that were set up in the lowlands, like the ones that he is showing, for example, these were found not buried, but they were slowly filled in due to erosion from above, silting in with a mud flood. No, not really a mud flood, but with sediment.
Oh my days.
Oh.
We want to believe so bad some alien created all this.
No, we don't. Nobody believes aliens created that. Actually, some people do, but nobody serious does.
It was Africa. Africa is Tartaria.
Everywhere is Tartaria. Everywhere is Tartaria. Watch one more place, even.
I tried to tell you that the Tartarian Empire was also in Brazil.
Oh no! Did you get my ass again, Bully Slayer? Did you get my ass?
And you didn't believe me.
No.
You didn't believe me.
No.
Well, guess what?
What? No.
When I say I got your ass. Oh, I've got your ass.
Ow!
You see,
he got it.
What you don't understand is the eyes are useless when the mind is blind. So even though you live in Brazil and you see these buildings every day, you don't know what you're looking at. You're looking, but you can't see.
They don't look anything like the other buildings we've been seeing.
1822. That was the time of the last reset.
Mm-hmm. Notice he says here 1822 is the time of the last reset. That was 200 years ago. We're going to see him give a different number in another clip.
The history you know is false.
Yeah, clearly.
Come on, brother. You've got to ask yourself, was everybody using the same architect?
No.
You can find these buildings.
It looked different.
All over the world. Chicago, Italy, Germany, and of course, Brazil.
And most of those were world fairs. Oh my days. Oh my diddy, you got my ass again. So there you have it. Look, these Tartarian enthusiasts, they find this stuff literally all over the world. Buildings that don't look anything alike with one another. It could be the pyramids. It could be the Moai on Rapa Nui or Easter Island. It could be neoclassical, Gothic. It could be any kind of style you could imagine except for modern brutalist style. And then it fits. And of course, don't forget, it could just be made out of bricks. But the real key for the Tartarian conspiracy are these mud flood buildings, the ones with these basements and stairs. These are the ones that are really focused on all over the world by this community. And so let's look at them in a little more depth. Most of them have just normal basements like this, but some of them actually aren't basements. They're buried below ground, lower floors. So let's look at those for a second and why. As an archaeologist who spends my time digging through the dirt to uncover the layers of our lost past, I can tell you that much of it is buried in dirt, in sediment, not usually in mud, but if it's raining out, sometimes I'll be digging through the mud as well. These buildings and monuments from the past are covered in layer upon layer of different types of sediment, much like a wedding cake. Sometimes the sediment that buries the monuments that we uncover filled in for natural reasons. For example, the famous site of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Excavators have documented that Göbekli Tepe was filled in by sediment that had washed down from above the slope over the eons, and the excavators were able to piece together different layers of slope wash. Much like a mud flood, except it was more like a landslide. Or in desert environments, wind-blown sand can cover up the monuments of the past. Take, for example, these photographs of the Sphinx from the 19th century, almost completely buried in sand. This is all wind-blown in. It's not mud in the least. But it's clearly a cover-up of epic proportions, is it not? Or, of course, there's the well-known site of Pompeii, buried in volcanic ash in AD 79. Not really a mud flood, but there was a pyroclastic flow nearby. But to be honest, most of our human settlements have been buried by anthropogenic sediment, so dirt brought in by people. Let's think about that for a second. If you walk through any continuously occupied city, like say Athens right here, you'll notice that older monuments like the Church of Monastiraki are at a lower level than the modern street. Over time, garbage, trash, the rubble from abandoned buildings has built up over time in order to create a higher street level century after century after century. Or in Valencia, which I visited just last month, the ruins of the Roman city are deep underground in the museum known as La Almoina. You can look down through a window into them. The reason for this is that as one building is destroyed, instead of clearing away all the rubble to build a new building, they just level the terrain on that rubble and build a little higher, a little higher, a little higher, creating that wedding cake stratigraphy effect that archaeologists study to understand the different layers of our past. We can see this, for example, in the lovely street section of the A303 outside of Stonehenge, where you can see a Roman road overlaid by different layers of modern roads, for example. Or a really good example in an urban environment comes from ancient Rome, in the Largo Argentina. It's used today actually as a cat sanctuary. But if you look here, there's 4 temples in a row. And if you look at their foundations, they're at slightly different levels. They were each built between 300 BC and 100 BC or so. And at different times, the street level was at a different height. And so they were not built at the exact same level to one another, even though they're right next to each other. This steady rise in settlements has been happening since humans first settled down in villages. With the first domestication of crops and animals, as people started living intensively in one space, the settlements slowly grew in height. We actually call these hills. They look like hills today, don't they? It looks exactly like a hill, but this is not a hill. This is an artificial structure. This is a mound known as a tell. As each building falls down, they build a new one a little higher, and over hundreds and thousands of years, a settlement becomes a hill or a tell. When you stand on a tell, it certainly looks like a hill to an uninitiated, but underneath you are thousands and thousands of years of different layers of history. It's really cool, actually, to think about. It's these layers that we dig through that form the stratigraphy that tells us about the different periods of time that these sites are being used. So by identifying what material comes from which layer, we can piece together what happens in the Roman period, in the Neolithic period, in the medieval period, etc. These are not remnants of a single mud flood. They are remnants of activity taking place over generations, building, living in it, rebuilding, abandoning it, building on top of it. The rhythms of life in an urban environment accumulating one year upon another to create a settlement that is slowly rising in its ground level. What it's not is it's not some conspiratorial cataclysm and cover-up. This is just a normal, natural process for human settlements. Now, okay, this knowledge bomb of archaeology and stratigraphy probably made sense for most of you when it comes to understanding buried ancient structures. Thousands of years of accumulation is easy to understand. We can start to recognize that. But mud flood theorists point to more recent buried levels of modern structures from 100 or 200 years ago. Why are these buried if not much time has gone past?
So you want to know more about the mud flood?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's real good.
Real good, man.
All right, listen to this. So the mud flood was a catastrophic event that happened roughly 150 years ago.
I thought earlier you said it happened 200 years ago in 1822. So which is it, man? Get your story straight.
Wiping out many civilizations and burying many buildings under mud. Many ancient structures that we see today was once buried.
Yeah, under sediment, under stratigraphy, under the detritus and abandonment of buildings, but whatever.
All over the world, you can find these buried structures. And we literally had to dig them out from the mud. And every now and then, we stumbled across sinkholes, uncovering buried buildings.
That did not look like a sinkhole. That looked like a construction hole or something. I don't know what it was.
And this is the reason why so many buildings have windows partly buried in the ground. If you notice with this one, the windows get smaller and smaller.
Oh my God, what does it mean?
Sometimes you see buildings with windows like this. Trust me, that's not a basement. Because if you keep digging, you will see the original front door. Oh my days. So anytime you come across buildings like this, you're dealing with mud flood.
Okay, so we'll get into some of these details over why sometimes there are actually lower floors of buildings under the current ground level. But I want to point out that these popular videos that Bully Slayer and others have made, like Dr. Regenerated and Minds Unveiled, they've led to a spate of people looking for buried architecture. And some of them are just even more silly than the ones we've already seen. And you're saying, how could this get even sillier? Okay, believe me, it does.
Don't mind the way I look.
I
You want
don't.
to have proof that the Great Mud Flood was real?
Yes.
So I'm at my beach house in North Carolina.
Okay.
Going down these steps,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to show you the top of the house that is buried.
Ooh,
It's always
that
been
sounds
here, so I never
interesting.
really thought much about it until I started waking up to shit. Okay? And let me show you something
Awakening.
wild. This, my friends, is the top of a buried house. There is a
I'm
house
sure it is.
underneath here. No, this is not a doghouse.
No, it's not.
There's no entrance, exit. It's just literally the top roof of a house.
Here, wait, let me zoom out. The comments got it right. The comments got it right. Sorry, buddy. This is a pump house for a well. There's a pump in there that pumps the well water that you use in your vacation house. This is not the buried top of a house. Oh God, these people can imagine, I guess, whatever they want. It is their prerogative to go ahead and use their imagination. But like I said, there are actually examples. These people pull out examples of buried first floors that these mud flooders oftentimes hark on. We've discussed that one in Shelbyville, for example, which was a coal chute for heating the house and stuff like that. And in many of these cases, there are good explanations just like that because they weren't buried very long ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago. We have actual documentary sources, newspapers, and historical documents that tell us what happened. And one of our best examples is actually in Chicago. So let me pull this up. So yeah, so this is a good example. One of our best examples is in the city of Chicago. Chicago, and this is documented in a number of places. There's all sorts of documentary evidence on this. And a good example is this website, Chicagoology, which goes into this in depth. And in 1855, the discussion started to raise the city of Chicago up higher because Chicago was originally founded on low-lying, swampy ground. And as it grew into the 19th century, the flooding became unbearable, as did the disease from the sewage and the swampy water that just wouldn't drain. In the 1840s and 1850s, there were a series of health epidemics. Chicago was ravaged by typhoid fever, dysentery, and cholera, back to back to back to back epidemics. It was a nasty situation. And so the city needed a proper sewer system, but it was too low lying. So in 1856, they decided to raise the entire city up several meters to a higher level in order to accommodate an underground sewer. And this was an enormous project. Cheaper buildings made of wood were either destroyed or rolled off to the outskirts of town, but more solid stone and brick structures were actually raised up higher. They were lifted with like jacks, you know, like how you jack up your car. This is what they did to these buildings. So, for example, if we scroll down a bit, this is this entire city block on Lake Street actually being raised above the ground level, one jack at a time. And a newspaper report actually tells us about how the businesses actually kept operating during this procedure. During the time of its performance, the business of the numerous stores and offices will be slightly interfered with, simply because it was just being jacked up very, very, very slowly and carefully, one little increment at a time. We can scroll down, for example, and we can see a building that was not raised up. This is the courthouse in Chicago. And on the left, you can see it in 1855. And you can see the street level here. And then the street level has risen some by 1858. And so we can see this kind of difference here. It didn't change due to a mud flood. We have documentation about these ingenious engineering decisions to make the city become habitable. One of my more favorite examples is at the bottom of this, which is the Briggs House, raised in 1866. And you can see them all just slowly raising this absolutely enormous, I think it was a hotel. And so there's actually a contemporary account of it from a Scottish traveler who was in town at the time, David McRae, who in 1867 wrote, "Great blocks of masonry in some parts of the city have been lifted from 4 to 14 feet. The Briggs House, a gigantic hotel, was raised 4.5 feet, and new foundation was built below. The people were inside of it the entire time, coming and going, eating and sleeping, the whole business of the hotel proceeding without interruption." Isn't this just kind of cool? This is such a cool testament to humans solving a problem. And Chicago's not the only city to have had this happen. Different portions of dozens of cities around the world have been raised and regraded. Galveston, Texas, which we've already seen. There's a whole Seattle underground that you can actually go visit today, which was due to raising of the ground level to prevent flooding. Sacramento, California, and then areas along rivers in like places like Paris and Rome and Moscow. Seriously, dozens, maybe hundreds of cities have had portions of their street level risen to accommodate infrastructure to prevent flooding or sewage drainage and stuff like that. And guess what? It's sometimes created remnants that are buried underground. Mud flood. Mud flood is what it is. Now look, I get it. I don't know if this video will reach those at the very, very bottom of this rabbit hole. We'll see. Unfortunately, the Tartarian community is one of nihilism and disbelief. What's left is right, what's up is down, what's true is lies.
Can somebody please tell me what in tarnations is going on? So surely by now you understand that history is a lie. And what you think is up is really down. And what you thought was left is really right. And what I mean by that is they've changed names, places, dates, people. They've changed everything. So let me see if I got this straight.
I mean, instead of believing experts in history, instead of believing the historical documents that they believe that history is a series of lies that we've all agreed upon.
History is nothing more than a set of lies agreed upon. And it's been going on for quite some time. Our parents, our grandparents, even our great-grandparents has all been told those set of lies agreed upon. Let's break that cycle. Question everything, friends. Until next time.
This is by far the deepest rabbit hole in the fake history and fake archaeology communities. At the end of it, there's nothing but lies and distrust.
Is it really so difficult to believe that you've been lied to? Is it really such a stretch of the mind to even consider the possibility that the world that we were raised to believe we lived in isn't real? I am a Tartarianist, and I'm here to reveal the truth to those of you who have not yet found this for themselves. Our version of humanity was launched into existence to repopulate after the fall of the great Tartarian Empire. Once upon a time in our not-so-distant past, there was an advanced worldwide civilization whose influence, technology, and architecture existed long before we stumbled upon it and found it. Yes, we literally found these abandoned superstructures, cleaned them up, and claimed them as our own. This is fact. We did not build these buildings. We found them. We repurposed them, and we claimed them for ourselves. I know, and I understand that that concept is difficult for some people to process. And I get the questions, show me evidence, show me proof. And I'm doing that time and time again. That proof and that evidence couldn't be clearer. Looking at the collection of photos that I'm showing you, we're seeing buildings that we couldn't construct today. In order to truly see this for yourself, you have to let go of your programming. You must let go of everything you think you knew because you learned it. I'm asking you to suspend your disbelief and look at the proof that's in front of you. If you take a peek behind the curtain, you'll see the wizard who's been pulling the strings the whole time.
I don't know what to say. I really don't hate these people, even if they accuse me and my colleagues of lying to you. Even if they believe that history is fantasy and fantasy is history, I don't hate them. These people aren't grifters like Graham Hancock or Eric von Däniken who make millions of dollars selling their books for a huge profit. The Tartarian community is made up of a series of people with small to moderate social media followings. They aren't making a fortune off of this. Most of these people, like those who wander around Cardiff seeing Tartaria everywhere, they're true believers. They really do believe this stuff. I honestly believe that they do. But it just makes me sad. This core belief that all of our history is a lie shows a real distrust, a lack of faith in all of humanity. It's nihilism, the ultimate black-pilled approach to our history. I don't really know how to restore such trust other than trying to keep sharing the evidence that we actually have for our real history. That's what I can do as an archaeologist here on YouTube. I can try to alert people to the popularity of these beliefs. Believe me, these videos are getting millions upon millions of views, and there's a huge community producing them. Hopefully this video will arm some of you with the tools to debunk these ideas before too many of your friends and family and loved ones can be radicalized by this nihilistic belief system. Maybe it will be enough to rescue a few of those who are not too deep down this rabbit hole. Maybe even it will help rescue a few who are. Maybe, just maybe, we can try to restore faith in humanity, in expertise, and in the evidence that we have for our past, because it's truly beautiful. It's truly beautiful. To the credit of the Tartarian community, it has been a pleasure to actually go walk around my city and try to take in the architecture of its monuments with new eyes. I obviously don't believe in some lost empire of Tartaria, but at the same time, it is truly lovely to see the urban fabric of Cardiff. Just be careful not to touch something that might resonate.
Rhymes and riddles, tickle, tickle, giggles, squiggle, jiggle, fiddle, flint, untibble. Rhymes and riddles, tickle, tickle, giggles, squiggle, jiggle, fiddle, dibble, 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 dibble. zero flint, I'm zero flint.